Manafort could be locked up after prosecutors accuse the president's former campaign manager of witness tampering while out on bail.
It's a major signal to the president, to Rudy Giuliani, to the president's other inner circle members that if you obstruct this investigation, if you lie, if you witness tampering, we're going after you.
Fumble. President Trump disinvites the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles for the traditional White House celebration, falsely claiming they did not respect the national anthem, even though no one from the team took a knee during the season. That sparks a strong reaction from Philly fans.
He's president, but it's a sport. Let these guys come who want to come. I mean, this is America's team, right?
Yeah, they should. They should be able to go. They should be able to go to the White House.
And Blue Crush. California Democrats are hoping to flip the balance of power in Congress, but could flooding the zone wipe out their chances?
The idea that Democrats might have thought diversity equals Democrat, what do you say to that?
Not so fast.
Not so fast.
Not so fast. Not so fast.
And good day, everyone. I'm Andrea Mitchell in Washington. Paul Manafort will be back in a Washington district courtroom in 10 days. He's now facing a fresh set of legal problems from special counsel Robert Mueller's team, accusing President Trump's indicted campaign chairman of trying to tamper with potential witnesses, reaching out to unnamed business partners through encrypted messaging apps back in February. Prosecutors are now asking to either revoke or modify Manafort's bail agreement. Manafort and his legal team must respond to the government's pretrial release motion by Friday. And at this time, they are refusing all comment on these new developments. NBC Justice correspondent Pete Williams joins me now. Pete, this is a big deal development.
It is potentially a big deal for Paul Manafort. Not surprising that his lawyer hasn't commented yet, because the comment that counts is the one he makes to the judge, who's going to decide whether, in fact, Manafort violated the conditions of his bail and has to go to jail while he awaits trial. So here's the deal here, Andrea. When he was allowed out on bail, he had to agree, and this is standard in these bail agreements, that he not commit any federal crimes. Now, Robert Mueller has come forward to accuse Manafort of committing a crime of witness tampering. What Mueller says here is that after the superseding indictment was filed, Manafort got in touch with a former employee who had been involved with him in doing some lobbying on behalf of the government of Ukraine. Manafort has always claimed that this lobbying was never in the United States. One of the things he's charged with here is violating the rules and the law on lobbying by lobbying in the U.S. for Ukraine, but not registering as a lobbyist. According to Mueller and the FBI statement that accompanied Mueller's court documents that were filed on this yesterday, Manafort sent a message to this employee saying, "We should talk. I have made clear that they," meaning a team of people that were to lobby on behalf of Ukraine, "I have made clear that they worked in Europe." And the person he contacted has told Mueller's prosecutors, according to court documents, that this person understood Manafort's outreach to, quote, suborn perjury, that is, to get this witness to say something that wasn't true. So if the judge finds that Manafort did, in fact, do this and violate the conditions of his bail, then the law says that puts the burden on Manafort to show why he should be allowed to stay out and why he wouldn't be a danger to the community or commit some other crime. So it's a very strong-arm tactic by Robert Mueller's prosecutors, and if Manafort isn't careful here, he could wind up in jail while he waits trial.
And Pete, is there a way can we figure out how the prosecutor figured this out? How did they find out? Were they surveilling him?
Well, they have a number of means. They were intercepting his communications. Some of these communications were by encrypted app. They clearly got subpoenas to look at his phone records, his iCloud documents. So they obviously talked to these people as well, who came forward to say, yeah, we thought he was trying to get us to commit perjury.
And thanks to Pete. And Pete, just hang a second, because we want to congratulate you. You are the winner of the Radio Television Digital News Association's 2018 John F. Hogan Distinguished Service Award for contributions to journalism and freedom of the press. It is so well deserved. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Andrea.
And joining us now, MSNBC legal analyst Mimi Rocah, former assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, and MSNBC national security analyst Clint Watts, former FBI special agent and author of the new book, Messing with the Enemy, Surviving in a Social Media World of Hackers, Terrorists, Russians, and Fake News. Talk about a timely book. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Mimi, first to you. Prosecutors do not like witness tampering. This could be a very serious deal for Manafort.
Absolutely. And it's not just that prosecutors don't like witness tampering, judges don't. This is something that judges really take very seriously. And, you know, I really think, assuming that the facts, you know, are proven to the judge, which it sounds like they will be. I mean, it sounds like they have very good proof, and I think that's probably why they waited. Even though this started back in February, they obviously wanted to get all their ducks in a row to really be able to show the judge this happened. And a judge is going to be, I think, very leery of leaving someone out on bail who has not just attempted to tamper with witnesses, but done it in such a brazen way while already on electronic monitoring, while asking for looser bail conditions. So he's shown himself to be reckless, and that's going to be something that a judge is really going to consider, that he isn't someone that can be trusted to abide by the court's rules and regulations leading up to trial.
And Clint, with all the defense arguments and the White House arguments, there's no collusion, there's no Russia involvement. Paul Manafort was the campaign chairman for a critical period of time. Your book goes into the whole role that Russian hackers and others played, and he had so many Russian connections that the case obviously has to be proved, but he's right at the center of this whole original reason for the Mueller investigation.
We sometimes overlook the Russian influence effort as only being online, but it was very much on the ground. It's an on-the-ground online game. And, you know, what I discuss in the book is they bring these two together, the physical world and the virtual world. And Manafort was the link for these things. He is the campaign manager. At times, he actually cited Russian propaganda. He did this on CNN. There was a fake Incirlik attack that was pushed out on social media. He actually cited that during an interview. And so when you look at Manafort's role in this, not only is it interesting that he has become the principal figure in it, but he also seems to be behaving the way he probably always behaved overseas. To think about going to a witness after you've been pulled into a court, you've been indicted, to try and communicate, hey, this is what you need to say, or hey, are we on the same page? This is very damaging. I think for the Mueller team, they're going to look at this very harshly, and I can't wait to really see how this plays out in the courts.
And one of the things that he did at the time when he was helping to secure the nomination was to influence, arguably, certainly that's the allegation, influence the GOP platform to soften language about Ukraine, the Ukrainian ally at the time.
Yeah. And
those elements who were allied to Russia.
This is after watching all this play out in social media, I started to get really concerned. This is in the summer of 2016. You're seeing policy changes. Policy changes, by the way, we would never see from Republicans. The thought of backing away or going soft on Russia and Ukraine was not something I expected from the RNC. But what do we see? We see a change in the platform. And this is exactly how influence works. It's not so much that the Kremlin wanted to go and install a Manchurian candidate to do their bidding. It was they wanted to see foreign policy changes that benefited Russia. And Manafort is the one figure that's tied up and links both the campaign and the Russian influence effort together. Which
certainly may well be, Mimi Rocah, why the president was tweeting on Sunday. Paul Manafort came into the campaign very late and was with us for a short period of time. He represented Ronald Reagan, Bob Dole, and many others over the years, but we should have been told that Comey and the boys were doing a number on him and he wouldn't have been hired, exclamation point.
Right, and you know that tweet is, well, first of all, it's outrageous that he's trying to put it on, you know, the FBI, that they should have warned him about Manafort, because first of all, they did. That's been well reported, and second of all, or not specifically about Manafort, but that the Russians were, you know, trying to get into their campaign. And second of all, Donald Trump has a long history with Manafort, which Mueller has already documented to some extent, and I'm sure is going to come out further. But, you know, I do think that the timing of that tweet is interesting, considering now that we know this about Manafort, and it does make one wonder if that was just a coincidence that Trump all of a sudden was tweeting about Manafort, and then we find out that Manafort, you know, did attempt to tamper with some witnesses, and that this is the week that the government is moving about that. Or did Trump, who is he in contact with? Did he somehow have some idea that something was coming down the pike soon?
Indeed. Mimi Rocha, thank you. A coincidence or something other than a coincidence? Hard to know at this stage. Thank you very much, Clint Walks. Congratulations on the book. And coming up, above the law, does President Trump have the extraordinary powers he thinks he does? Plus, Super Bowl snub. After most Eagles team members plan to boycott the White House celebration, the president tries to beat them at their own game. Philly's mayor joining us next. You're watching Andrea Mitchell Reports on MSNBC.
Does the president believe that he is above the law?
Certainly not. The president hasn't done anything wrong.
The question isn't if he's done anything wrong. I guess the question is, does the president believe the framers envisioned a system where the president couldn't pardon himself, where the president could be above the law?
Certainly the Constitution very clearly lays out the law. And once again, the president hasn't done anything wrong, and we feel very comfortable in that front.
NBC's Peter Alexander pressing Sarah Sanders about President Trump's claims of extraordinary legal authority following the president's tweet that, quote, I have the absolute right to pardon myself. But why would I do that when I have done nothing wrong? Joining me now, NBC White House correspondent Kristen Welker and Charlie Savage, the Washington correspondent for the New York Times and an MSNBC political contributor who won the Pulitzer for his book Power Wars. First, Kristen, to you, pardoning himself. There's no precedent for that. Are they still claiming that he has these unlimited, extraordinary powers?
Well, overnight, the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, reiterated that he believes the president does have the power to pardon himself, although Giuliani stressed the president has no plans to do it because it would amount to political suicide. The reason Giuliani is making that argument, Andrea, because the Constitution doesn't say he doesn't have the power to pardon himself. However, it's a theory that's really never been tested because the president's never tried to pardon himself, and a lot of legal experts say it likely wouldn't stand up for a couple of reasons. One of them being the language is important in the Constitution. It says that that the president has the power to grant pardons. Well, typically, grant is something that is given to someone else. The other part of the language, no one may be a judge in his own case. And that was what the Justice Department told Richard Nixon in 1974, just days before he resigned. So that was what the Justice Department had determined back then. But again, no president has ever actually tried to pardon himself, Andrea, so it's still very much untested.
And political suicide is one issue, but Charlie Savage, legally, this expansive view of presidential powers is extraordinary.
That's right, and this goes beyond this tweet that he can pardon himself in this sort of untested issue. Kristen's absolutely right that the Justice Department told Nixon he couldn't because he couldn't be a judge in his own case, but we don't know. No president's ever tried to do it. The larger assertion of executive power that we now see coming into view in the Trump administration is what was found in these memos that we published last weekend from Trump's legal team to Bob Mueller. And the overarching claim that they've been whispering in the president's ear, we now know for the past year, is that he is above the law when it comes to obstruction of justice. Congress has made it a crime to impede an investigation with corrupt intent, and what his lawyers have been telling him is that, unique among all people in the United States, he does not have to obey that law. He can impede an investigation no matter what his motive, because Congress lacks authority to intrude on his constitutional power to supervise the machinery of federal law enforcement. It's a sweeping view. It has echoes of Nixon saying when a president does it, that means it's not illegal. It has echoes of some arguments that have been made during Iran-Contra and after 9/11, when we saw Justice Departments saying that the president is the commander-in-chief, so he doesn't have to obey the Boland Amendment or anti-torture and wiretapping laws. But it's being applied in a very different context, not a president pushing the limits to advance foreign affairs and defend the country, but a president pushing the limits to defend himself.
And we had that one precedent of Richard Nixon with David Frost, which was so instructive. Let's play that.
So what, in a sense, you're saying is that there are certain situations where the president can decide that it's in the best interest of the nation or something and do something illegal.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
That's certainly a comparison, Kristen, that the White House can't be enjoying.
They can't be enjoying it. They're pushing back against it, Andrea. However, if you go back to that letter that we learned about over the weekend, obtained by the New York Times from the president's legal team at the time back in January to the special counsel, it laid out a very similar case that the president can't obstruct justice because he's the president, that he can't be forced to testify under oath. So very similar tones to what you just heard there in that historic interview. I would stress one other point here, Andrea, the fact that you have a very robust pushback from Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill. Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, essentially saying if his lawyer told him that the president could pardon himself, he would fire that attorney because it doesn't make sense and it doesn't stand up legally. So Congress really trying to warn the president against even having this type of discussion while the Russia probe continues, Andrea.
Charlie Savage, thanks to you and Kristen Welker. And we are following some breaking.